So welcome to Inside the Truck YouTube number 5. Edmonton Oilers, Doug Hicks was number 5. Who else was number 5? Guy Lapointe was number 5.
Mhm.
Are they the two most famous number 5s, Paul?
Not even close, Steve. You're forgetting number 5 for your Detroit Red Wings, Nick Lidstrom. Probably the most famous number 5 to ever lace him up.
He did win a Conn Smythe Trophy, didn't he?
He was a human highlight reel.
I'm Steve Lansky. I've produced Hockey Night in Canada, the CFL on CBC, and about 15 other sports for every network in Canada.
I'm Paul Hemming. I've been a live sports TV director for over 20 years. I directed 16 consecutive World Junior Hockey Championships for TSN. I directed the Golden Goal, Sidney Crosby at the 2010 Winter Olympics. And currently I'm the broadcast director for the Carolina Hurricanes on Fox Sports Carolinas.
Just before we start, buddy, I'm just going to have a nice sip from my...
Yes.
That's a nice koozie. That still looks good, doesn't it?
The old Syracuse Orangeman.
It is not, but look at this. Look what I got.
Oh, no, you don't. I love it.
Miss Grey Cup 1991. Cheryl Gordon came through for you, buddy.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know what's going on here, Steve's friend, Cheryl Gordon, crochets these beautiful drink koozies. And I was jealous that I didn't have one like Steve. So Steve pulled some strings, and Cheryl, thank you, Cheryl, if you're watching this. I know you are. Thank you. It's very kind of you. I will use it until it's threadbare.
I will put it in the mail, maybe today, maybe not. I might make you wait a little bit.
Well, that means I should get it in about 6 months.
Oh, dear. So the qualifier we have to put on today is we're going to talk about the World Junior Championship on TSN, a show that I get paid to work on at the moment, and a show that you directed for 16 years. So we're not going to, pour gasoline all over everything and set it on fire. We're just going to be objective about the tournament and what we see on the broadcast, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we just did an hour plus podcast, episode 16, Christmas Gold, was dedicated entirely to TSN's production of the World Junior Hockey Championships. And, many of the people that work on that show have been my colleagues for a long time and are still friends. So, Steve, we do get a lot of feedback on our social media platforms, and people want to know, like, what do you think? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And so we just thought it'd be good to, to fire up another YouTube and let the, just air it out.
We did. So this is a bit of an insight on how television production works. So you see the title up here that Paul does all the graphics. He's the brains, that he's divined there. We went back and forth DMing for 20 minutes to decide what to put up there today. So no stone, right? And it's the same as TV production. No stone gets unturned or discussed. No. And it's the same with the TSN broadcast, right? So what part of their broadcast so far do you want to kick around first?
Well, I mean, let's being a director, let's just dive right into cameras, because that's really the only world I live in. Just in terms of the coverage and stuff, TSN has 25 cameras for this these broadcasts. So just to give you an idea, they have like in the mid 30s for a Grey Cup. 25 cameras for a hockey game is a ton. I think when I directed the gold medal game at 2010 in Vancouver, I think we had like 21 or 22. Wow. So that gives you an idea in terms of what TSN is putting into these broadcasts in terms of facilities. But there are a couple of couple of things that popped out for me just in terms of that. And number one is typically when the tournament's in North America, Steve, they have what they call like an overhead robo or a center hung or whatever they want to call it.
Right over the dot.
Right over the dot, the face-off dot. And it gives you those great shots where it comes down to right over the centerman. Boom, they drop the puck and you're playing. That is surprisingly missing from these games. And it's the first time that the tournament's been in North America where I can remember them not having this camera. That was the first sort of thing that jumped out at me. The second one is the RF or the cableless handheld camera that is operated by a skater on ice. And he flies around and gets all those pretty pictures that you see from inside the boards. Steve, what are your thoughts on that camera?
I absolutely adore that camera. I'll be honest, I don't miss the over the center ice dot because you get to see it 3 times a game and maybe once or twice on a replay. That's it. The gentleman skating out there in the white suit for me is pure gold. He can get right here on a goalie when we're getting ready to drop the puck. He's right there when the referee holds up the puck and gives the oh so hokey, have a good one, boys, before he drops it.
Let's do that hockey.
Right. Well, some referees are like that, though. You know that. You've heard sound from referees on ice. Some of them are just. Andy Van Helleman was a bit off the wall that way too. So, but I love it. I love that we're right there because I think it's the next level of television. One day I know we're going to be in the room live during intermissions and pre-games without a delay and with qualifiers on the front end, and we're going to hear all kinds. But that we're not there yet. But to me, this is the next step. I absolutely love it.
I first of all, kudos to TSN and the IIHF for pulling this off. I tried that camera once at 2010 at the World Junior Championships in Saskatchewan. But unfortunately, I didn't ask for permission. I sort of begged for forgiveness after. And some say I probably begged for my job after. But I sent that wireless camera out in the middle of a Canada-USA shootout on New Year's Eve in Saskatoon. The pictures were amazing. Not nearly as good as you're getting today with this camera. So I just first of all, I think it's great that the IHF has sort of signed off on this and got all the teams to play along with it as well. My philosophy from a direction standpoint is always put the viewer as close as you can to the action or to the athletes, and this camera certainly executes that. Nathan Ides, or Nate Ides, is the camera operator. He's from Winnipeg. A phenomenal camera op. He does the RF handheld on many of the CFL shows. If you watch the Canadian Football League on TSN2, so Nate's the guy that's out there in the huddle as well. Nate does an amazing job, and let's face it, a lot of times he's skating backwards, or at the very least, he's skating with the camera on a side profile shot, and he's keeping up with these first rounders that have been drafted into the NHL. So kudos to Nate for that. Pictures are phenomenal. The only thing I will say is that I believe that that camera should just be used judiciously, I think, is probably the best way to put it. In a tournament like the World Juniors, where you're doing 1, 2, maybe sometimes 3 games a day, it's easy to fall into what we call a cut pattern, right? Puck goes in the net, cut the goal scorer from an up camera, cut the goalie, handhelds out there, boom, take it, and just sit on it till the replay. I just, from my, just my thoughts on that is there's probably a lot of other really good pictures going on at the time, whether there's fans in the stands or not. The athletes on the ice and the coaches and the benches give you some real pretty pictures as well too. I would just be cautious to, if you use it all the time, then it becomes less impactful and it's not really that, a great anymore. It just sort of becomes, you expect it. So that's all I'm saying is just use it judiciously. That's all.
Let me ask you this though. And I understand the whole cut pattern philosophy. Do you think the guy at home gives a rat's rear end about the cut pattern? Or
no, I don't.
But you said at home it might lose some impact. So you think he cares, or he just really doesn't care?
Well, no, he doesn't care because he doesn't know what shots are not making it to air, right? Like let's say, for example, there's a penalty. The team scores on the power play, and then for the reaction of that shot, what you don't want is what the viewer at home sees is like the ass end of the guy skating back to the bench who was the GOAT, right? They scored on his penalty, but he's skating right into the 100-to-1 lens of the reverse camera where he's probably going like, but you're not seeing it because the camera guy is forced to just chase the guy across the ice from behind, right? So yes, although it's a unique shot because we're at ice level skating across the ice with the athlete, this player just came out of the penalty box. In my mind, it's not the best shot at that moment. At that moment, it's the reverse camera that's got a massive lens that's sucking the eyes out of the GOAT at that point.
So when you're directing something like this, how aware are you of falling into that cut pattern? Can you do that in the moment, or do you have to go back and look at a tape? There's no time for that. So how do you avoid that?
Yeah, you have to watch we all in everything that we do in life, we're all our own worst critics, right? And it's no different if you're a TV sports director. You have to go back and you have to watch everything because not everything you do every night is gold. It's not.
What?
It's not. Yeah, it's not.
Everything you did every night wasn't gold?
No, my goodness. If I got a gold is the exception night, right? Mostly it's like bronze, maybe fourth. So yeah, you have to go back and and examine it. But you bring up a great point, Steve. In a tournament like this, where it's 2-3 games a day, all you have time to do is to crawl back to your, bubble hotel room, get some sustenance, get some rest, and recharge your battery, and make sure that when you wake up the next morning, you're ready to go again for 1 or 2 or 3 games. So there's not really any time to watch that back.
And you have to rely on maybe an executive producer, maybe an associate director, maybe a associate producer to say, listen, you might want to keep an eye on that, but that's a really hard subject to broach unless you're the
Sure.
executive producer, right? Like,
Right. Yeah, you're not getting that from your peers.
mm-mm,
Like
mm-mm.
like Chris Edwards, the producer, isn't going to turn to Andy and go, I think we've seen enough of that camera. Or, Franklin Rubenstein, who's the other director there for TSN, is not going to say to Andy one night in the, the meal room, hey, like you're really riding that handheld a lot. Like those conversations aren't going to happen. The only way that Andy will know is to watch it back and go, yeah, I probably could have taken another shot there or whatever. But, but it's easy. I've been there. I've done 2-3 games a day. It's easy for that to happen.
Yep, I understand that completely. Now, what about the one that I think you and I disagree on is the virtual interview up on the set? TSN, I know it's been used in other places, but this is kind of the first time it's really grabbed me. And they do the swirl animation, and then the guest magically appears. Not a
Like
big fan, or
like Star Trek.
yeah,
Yeah.
like Star Trek. Okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna call it the Star Trek from now
Beam
on.
me
What do you
up.
think of the start? Yeah, what do you think
Yeah.
of the beam up?
Beam me up, Jimmy, because James is the host, right? That's the
Right.
segment should be called Beam Me Up, Jimmy.
I like it. I
yeah.
like it.
Um, okay, so again, love the technology. Again, kudos to TSN for stepping up and doing something original, creative. But again, it flies in the face for me of like, is that the best shot, right? Because again, I can't help it. I'm wired to think like a director. And at that point, I want to see a close up of the coach. I want to see a close up of the athlete. I want to see, I want to get intimate with the guest, and that shot is far from intimate.
But they could, so they only do this on a 3-shot on a wide from offset. They could have a tight shot and go back and forth from the virtual wide to a tight shot of the interview guest, right?
You could, but it would. I would like that because it gives you a chance to see the athlete or the coach up close. But it would seem a little funky because now you're getting into what's the background for the player when you cut him. Does he have a Hockey Canada TSN sort of backdrop behind him? But you don't see that on the 3-shot. It starts to get a little bit off the rails at that point. I think once you beam him up, he's kind of stuck there on the stool with his skate guards on until the interview's over.
And they obviously have a spot where the person being interviewed looks, or maybe they have a monitor in the distance that's what they use. But to me, and I love it because you touched on it, I hate it when TV is lazy and not creative. And you can't say that that's lazy, and you can't say it's not creative. What I really struggle with is James Duthie gets a bit of a break because he's about 10 or 12 feet away from the virtual guest. His eye line can be in the general area, but poor Bob McKenzie, who's right there, has to trust people to tell him where to look. Look a little further left, look a little higher. And of course, your guests are different height. So where you looked for the last guest, you might not be looking for this guest. That's really hard. And I feel for Bob, and Bob looks like he's struggling with it a bit, to me anyway.
Yeah, no, exactly. And don't forget, so where Bob's looking, he's getting blasted with TV lights. Okay. He's getting blasted with camera operators. He's getting blasted with makeup artists. He's getting blasted with associate producers. He's getting blasted with other, TSN support staff that's up there. So he's got an army of people that he's looking that are also sort of at the best of times trying not to be a distraction. Now you're asking him to look at an imaginary point where an imaginary guest is, right? Yeah, it's a lot to ask. And that's the thing is just, you always have to have the talent. So in this case, it's James Duthie and Bob McKenzie. They always have to look comfortable. They always have to look like they're in control, and they always have to look like they're having fun. Those are, you have to make sure that you check all those boxes.
And if you and I were doing something like this and I was producing and you were directing, we would try to think of it, we would discuss it ad nauseum. What's the way to make this the best? And so that everybody looks good. But you're right. The two guys on the set have to look the best because they're the two guys that the country can see or the world can see. Nobody else can see anything else. Maybe what they need is a broomstick with Wilson. Remember
Yeah,
Wilson
yeah,
from Castaway?
yeah,
Just here,
exactly.
Bob, look at the and just move it around until his eyes are. I don't know what the solution is, but yeah, it would certainly get discussed a lot, right?
Yeah, or just have one of the many people that are behind the camera, just give him a big bullseye and just have him just stand right where he needs to look eye line wise, and he just looks at the bullseye, right? But yeah, no. Anyways, again, kudos to the initiative, kudos to the technology. Again, everything we're talking about is 100% subjective, and for me, I just like to be in the athletes' faces. That's all.
It is subjective. I think creativity is subjective. I agree with that. But then to me, the line would be drawn like with Bob looking uncomfortable and clearly looking at the guy's elbow. Like it's unfortunate because HD isn't doing him any help either. If this was 20 years ago in SD, of course we wouldn't have the Star Trek effect, but you couldn't really see. But now you can see you can even see little eye movements that he's making. So it's really hard, and I'm sure I would guess that he absolutely hates it because
Oh, yeah.
he's not looking his best, right?
Well, it's out of his comfort zone, right? It's not There's nothing comfortable about this. It's not natural, and it's not something that's done on a regular basis. So now you're asking him on the biggest shows of the year to hit a home run every time with this, and it's a tough ask.
It is a tough ask. Now, what about the clock? So Canada's playing Germany. The puck is going to go in the net. It's about this far from the goal line. The clock that's burned into the TSN replay clearly says 0.0. They they go they go to the challenge room, the replay booth. Gord Miller and Ray Ferraro on TSN say, "Oh, there's no way that can count. Look, it's right there. The evidence is right there. Call on the ice stands. It's a good goal." How does that even happen, man?
Yeah. Well, how it happens is it was definitely an issue on the IHF's end. In this tournament, unlike the NHL, the command center is set up, at Rogers Place, right? So they have to do this technically. So it means they have to take a feed of the clocks. They have to run it into their, video review system. Um, just to give everyone a background on it, the TSN show takes their data or their data from the clock up above the ice. So therefore, there's never any discrepancy between the in-house clock and the TV.
So when the horn goes, TSN's clock hits 0 at exactly the same time.
Correct. So where the breakdown occurred was I think off by like 0.2 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
Where the breakdown occurs is from the house to the IHF video review system. And it's a terrible mistake. And thank God it didn't happen. It didn't rear its ugly head in the gold medal game. But it's an honest mistake, because I can safely say that in all the shows that I've done, we've never faxed out the clock data between the clock and the truck and the NHL command center. So it's one of those things where it's just like, oh, it's all good. Our clock's good, their clock's good, so what IHF's getting is good. And unfortunately, it took that goal to prove that something was awry.
It wouldn't even, you say faxed out. Before every show, we do a facilities check where basically you check all the systems that you don't want to fail during a game. Intercom system, camera system, talking to the cameras talking back to you, all that stuff.
Anything electrical.
Check, right?
Right? I mean, how many times has something electrical failed when you couldn't afford it to fail? So, right?
It's an electrical fail. What is it? I don't know. It's an electrical fail.
Yeah.
But would you, if you and I were doing the game, I would never look at you and say, "Did you fax the game clock?" Versus like never.
No. And
never. It's assumed to be correct.
Right. And the IHF people that are, organizing the video review, they don't have their own technical engineer there to think, oh, we should probably fax that out or whatever, right? They're just like, okay, here's the cable. Okay, plug it in. Okay, we're good. But like I said, it's electrical, right? Sometimes you plug it in and it's no good.
Well, they did fax it out in the worst way possible.
Right.
On the air.
Right. Exactly. Right.
That was not rehearsed.
No. And let's thank the hockey gods above that it wasn't on an overtime goal for Canada in the gold medal game.
Oh, no kidding, because it's entirely possible, right? Mm-hmm. Anything else we didn't kick around that we should?
Just the virtual use of fans and the families and stuff, integrating those Zoom calls. I love it. I love the technology. it's awesome to be able, in a tournament where you have no fans, and especially when this tournament's in Canada. I mean, the fans are, there's two teams on the ice and the fans, and really those are the three
Yeah.
stories of the game, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a nice way to incorporate it. Again, the only thing I will say is just be judicious with it. If Canada scores 16 goals, unless it's sponsored and somebody's paying for it, I don't think we need to see it 16 times. I think you could probably stop at about 10 or 11. Just because there's other shots that aren't getting to air that could be, even without fans. How about the dejection at the Germany bench, or, the Germany coach whipping his whiteboard against the glass because, they look like a Tim Hortons Timbit team out there or whatever, right? Like, just, there's better shots out there. Just be judicious with it. It's a great toy. It's awesome to have for the show. And same with the families as well, too. I think they've tried to roll the dice and go live on that a couple times. And, you can't do it because there's a delay, right? So it doesn't work.
There's too much of a delay, right? I hate when they cut live to bars in cities during games, or this is the stadium in Tampa while they're playing the World Series and the fans are packed in and I don't like that at all. I don't mind this for some reason. I like that. I don't have it in front of me. It seems like it might be 4x4 or 4x5 or 5x5 even. So you've got lots of screens to look at, lots of screens to choose from as a viewer. But I think you're right. It's the same thing you talked about when you get into that pattern. Now, the good news is Canada's not going to score 16 again in this tournament. So that won't be an issue. But I kind of like the way they've done it. But you're right, just judicious, right?
Yeah, I just it's like when you get that awesome brand new toy that was like the first thing you want on Santa's list, and then you get it and you play with it every day for 16 straight days, and then all of a sudden you can't find it because it's buried in the bottom of your toy chest because you're bored of playing with it. Just use it. Use it when it has that really, has that impactful moment. Don't just use it just because.
Now, let me ask you this, though, okay, because you've been in this situation and so have I. You may not want to use it as much. The Star Trek on the set, the virtual fans or families, and you're reminded that we need to use that often. And the reminder usually comes with a hand on your shoulder in the truck, which is never good.
Yeah, or meet me in my office.
I haven't had many of those. The hand on the shoulder in the truck I don't like because we're trying to work. And now somebody's giving you, let's think about doing this more. How much of that could be involved, though? There could be some, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, for sure. Especially like, first of all, if it was sponsored, then, like those like live look-ins, brought to you by Molson Canadian. Yeah, then it's a no-brainer. You're doing them all the time. These don't appear to be sponsored. I don't see a sponsor logo on the fans or the families. But you're right. There was a lot of behind the scenes legwork that went in to make this happen. So yes, there will be a directive from the top to make sure that we get this in. But again, everybody, at the end of the day, all everybody wants is the best show possible. And just so every once in a while, it's okay to just step back and take a 10,000-foot look and go, yeah, you know what? We could probably back off on those a little bit. You know what I mean?
Again, tough to do when you're in it, but that's why you have people who aren't in the cauldron of the truck watching the show. And you're right, having that 10,000-foot look. Is that it? Have we kicked it all around? Are we done with YouTube number 5?
I think we are, Steve. But let's just, in fairness, this is an unbelievable event that is put on not only for viewers on TSN but seen around the world. I'm down here in the United States watching on every game on the NHL Network. So there's a lot of people working diligently on this to put the best product in the air possible. The shows look fantastic, from the openings that are created to musical bumpers to features on the athletes. To the interviews that we see around the game, pre-games and post-game shows. So kudos to TSN. But like we mentioned earlier, the tournament's been on for 3 days now. So, and we've received some feedback on social media. So we just thought we'd get on and kick around what we've seen so far through 3 days.
That's exactly right. We wanted to address those things that people bring up, and then in doing it in this form, we can go back and forth with that addressing. So I'm Steve. He's Paul. That's it for Inside the Truck YouTube number 5. Nick Lidstrom, apparently. And this will be in the mail.
Ah,
very, very soon.
yeah, I should get that in about 6 months. Thank you, Canada Post.